Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Muhammad Abduh bin Zunnabli. My metric number is 2021-101541. So I will start the presentation with 1.0, which is introduction. Alright, Sukuk can be said to be an instrument for Islamic finance that plays an important role in the capital market. Sukuk has an objective in the context of capital acquisition to obtain financial injection either from the government or third party, namely any business entity such as company in the country. Sukuk can be considered as an Islamic investment certificate that represents a value on an asset known as Islamic bond or Sharia compliant bond. Alright, if we observe and analyze, Sukuk and conventional bonds do have some similarities in the context of loan agreement in form of a certificate which contains all the details involving the par value of bonds, coupon rates, bond maturity dates, and others. Nevertheless, the concept of Sukuk is based on physical goods that have a total real value or refers to intrinsic value, which means it must be based on the goods that have rental cash flow or debt from sale and purchase agreement involving asset. Alright, so this presentation will address all aspects including the concept of Sukuk, which touch on the definition of Sukuks and also Sukuk rating, as well as describe the function of Sukuk in more depth. In addition, this study also demonstrates the global and local Sukuk ratings company as well as research on a local Sukuk rating agency that has been selected. Based on the selection, details on the company backgrounds, process of Sukuk ratings, rating watch, rating outlook, and also rating symbols are also included in these presentations. In addition, also include issues and challenges involving the implementation of Sukuk in Malaysia. 2.1 Definition of Sukuk. Sukuk is an Arabic term commonly used for asset securities, which is the plural of the word sak. Literally, a quarter carries the meaning of a certificate, and there are several definitions that state a Sukuk as a paper that represents a financial obligation arising from trade and commercial activities. In addition, Sukuk is also defined as a certificate of trust that represents undivided beneficial ownership in an underlying assets or business venture. There are three most authoritative definition available. Right. Number 1, the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Institution, AAOIFI, in its Sharia Standard number 17, item number 2, defines investment Sukuk as certificates of equal value representing undivided shares in ownership of tangible assets, usufructs and services, assets of particular projects or special investment activity. Number 2, the Islamic Financial Services Board, IFSB, defines Sukuk in IFSB 2, reference number 193, as certificates that represents the holder's proportionate ownership in an undivided parts of an underlying assets, where the holder assumes all rights and obligations to such assets. And for the third one, which is the Sharia Committee Malaysia, in its guidelines on issuance of private debt securities and Sukuk to retail investor, defines Sukuk as certificates of equal value which evidence undivided ownership or investment in the assets using Sharia principle and concepts endorsed by the Sharia Advisory Council, SAC. 2.2 Definition of Sukuk ratings. Sukuk rating is an assessment of an instrument's relative creditworthiness in terms of meeting its contractual obligations. The credit risk of Sukuk holders is that the commitment to honor financial obligations such as rentals, profit sharings, and assets buybacks when they are due may not be kept. Both the investor and the issuers gain from a Sukuk rating. Credit rating is a process by which an impartial third party such as credit rating agency like RAM and MRAC assesses the likelihood of a business issuer inability to repay its debts. It focuses on specific loan instrument rather than a company's whole credit or financial situations. Various improvements instruments, including as a guarantees, cash, letter of credits, or other procedures mean to lessen the risk of default on particular issues, will be considered in the rating. As a result, multiple rating categories for different debt issues might be assigned to corporations at any time.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hello everyone. My name is Amirhuzair Hasmadi from IC 2105P. My student ID is 2021126233 and I'm the second presenter for this group. And now we continue with the 2.3 Why and Function of Sukuk Rating. A company's Sukuk Rating, also commonly referred to as company credit rating, is determined by a rating agency's assessment of the probability distribution of future cash flow to bondholders. This depends on the company's future cash flow. There are two basic types of Sukuk evaluation. These are Sukuk ratings developed for specific debt securities or other financial obligations that apply to the Sukuk market, and the Sukuk ratings for the issuers of debt securities that apply to the Sukuk market. This is essentially an attempt to educate the general public about the likelihood that an investor will receive the promised principal and interest payments associated with the issuance of a Sukuk. The latter is the current assessment of the issuer's overall ability to meet its financial obligations and reflects the issuer's basic creditworthiness. It is commonly known as an independent third-party or credit rating agency (CRA) responsible for creating credit ratings in Malaysia. The CRA assesses the ability of issuers of companies to fail to repay their debts based on the loan repayment history of all regional banks in the country. It only considers the types of repayment, not the issuer's general creditworthiness or financial position. Rating considers a variety of improvement tools such as guarantees, debt relief funds, letter of credits, or other mechanisms that mitigate the risk of default in the event on a particular problem. In this way of matter, a company can assign different rating classes to different debts at different times. It is intended to help assess and predict the default probability of the Sukuk problem and the importance of the rating in making investment decisions. Sukuk ratings benefit both investors and issuers. For investors, ratings quantify the risk of responding to financial risk in a timely manner compared to other Sukuks. Sukuk evaluation has many advantages for the issuers. First, the support the pricing of valuation of the required returns. Second, it improves access to the capital markets. Finally, it boosts investor confidence. In many jurisdictions, Sukuk ratings seems mandatory. Next is 2.4 Sukuk rating global and local. Since 2013, the global Sukuk market has grown tremendously. The US dollar-dominated Sukuk market as measured by the Dow Jones Sukuk Total Return Index and the S&P Global High Yield Sukuk Index is experiencing annual growth rates of approximately 18% increase in government and super-state issuance. There is also strong investor demand for Sharia-compliant securities. Recent growth in the global Sukuk market could accelerate as new entrants continue to enter the market, as GCC issuers are considering refinancing to make up for the growing deficit. In addition, both Indonesian and Malaysian corporate issuers are beginning to shift their funding sources from traditional bonds to Sukuk. The world's first Sukuk was launched in Malaysia in 1990 when Shell MDS Malaysia's Nurul Berhad issued $135 million Malaysian ringgit. Since then, the probability of Sukuk, an interest-free Sharia-compliant fixed income product, has continued to grow, especially in Malaysia. Sukuk has enjoyed high demand from Malaysian Muslims and non-religious investors for many years. Rating agencies expect Malaysia Islamic financial institutions to increase Sukuk issuance by 10% to 13% in 2018 compared to the 2017. It has to be said that Malaysia launched the world's first Sukuk in 1990, the world's first Sukuk for global companies in 2001, and the world's first Green Sukuk in 2017. Green Sukuk is essentially a Sharia-compliant renewable energy lending instrument. These are the companies that submitting Sukuk based on the sources obtained from the official websites of the Islamic Financial Foundation and the Malaysian Security Commissions. Various Sukuk such as Sukuk Murabahah, Sukuk Wakalah, and Sukuk Ijarah are used. Each company submits the best Sukuk for their company, and not all Sukuks of the same type are used. Like for example, in local Sukuk, there are companies like Nazar Titidia Capital Berhad, Sarawak HM Sdn Berhad, and Leong Hub Capital Sdn Berhad. Meanwhile, the global company that issued Sukuk like perusahaan penerbit SBSN Indonesia, 3K Electric Limited, and also Alpha Star Holding Limited. Now we will proceed to 3.1 company background of RAM. RAM Holdings Berhad is a leading independent provider of credit ratings, research, education, risk analysis, ESG analysis, and credit ratings. RAM Holdings, formerly Malaysian Berhad Rating Agency, was established in 1990 as a catalyst for the country's debt capital markets and also the country's first rating agency. In 2007, rating business was transferred to their new subsidiary, RAM Rating Services Berhad. In addition to credit ratings, RAM Groups offer a range of solutions from economic and debt market research, data analysis to sustainability services. RAM Rating Services Berhad is one of the existing credit rating agencies and a pioneer in Malaysia credit rating services. Commonly trust financial products include Sukuk, ordinary bonds, ringgit financial securities, banks, and insurance companies. Credit ratings implemented by RAM Ratings are used as benchmark for Malaysian regulators, communities, investors, and the financial community. RAM Rating Service Berhad is one of the leading and largest rating agencies in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. It is the institutional infrastructure that supports the growth of the Malaysian bond market. There are approximately 270 billion worth of bonds issued by more than 800 entities based in Malaysia and 13 other countries. Their rating portfolio includes companies, governments, financial institutions, insurance companies, project finance, and structured finance bonds. Under the establishment of this entity, there are several companies, namely RAM Rating Services Berhad, RAM Sustainability Senior Berhad, and RAM Solutions Senior Berhad. The entity is headed by its chairman, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Amir Sham A. Aziz, as the sole chairman of RAM Holdings Berhad, joined by several other leading members such as Mr. Chris W. K. Lee, CEO and Executive Director, Mr. Pramod Das, Executive Director of RAM Sustainability, Mr. Chong Kyu Seong, Executive Director of RAM Solutions, and many others. That's all from me. I'm going to pass this floor to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Khairoh Binti Mohd Yasir. My metric number is 2021 103409. Okay, I will proceed with 3.2, which is process of Sukuk rating. Okay, the process of credit rating means all steps taken, including the credit rating action. However, the process is not limited to the allocation and selection of analysis for handling the MATE, but it is including the application of credit rating methodology, interaction with voting entities, decision making of activities, and others. A rating of credit can be assigned to a specific debt issue which is issued credit rating, or it can be the indicating the ability of the entire entity to fulfill its obligation for publisher and strength rating. Okay, for RAM, it has 7 process of Sukuk rating. Okay, in this diagram, I will explain it specifically in the next slide. The process of credit rating starts when the RAM ratings is mandated to provide rating. It is common seen when there is a potential issuer which approach and appoint RAM ratings to provide a rating. Through a rating mandate, the relationship between the RAM ratings and the entity to be rated will formalize. And in the second step, which the step of information request, the RAM ratings will request for materials from the entity and a set of background information. It will comprise the following aspects such as industry information in which the entity run and the overview of the operation of entity and its statistic support. Okay, the next step, in the step of meeting with key management, the information will be reviewed and the RAM ratings analysis will have a meeting with the key management personnel of the entity. It will provide the rating team and a venue to have a better understanding in certain trend in the operation of entity performance. Okay, for the next step, the process of credit rating will be proceed with deliberation by the rating committee. Okay, in this process, it will be including the pursuant to the management meeting. Then the rating team will finalize and submit a report, which including the rating recommendation to the rating committee. After the deliberation process, the entity will notify the outcome. When the rating has been determined, the entity which has been rated is notified of the rating. In this stage, the rated entity may do the following aspects such as accept the rating, appeal for reconsiderations, and reject the rating. If the entity wants to appeal for consideration, they must submit new information or add some information. Then the rating committee will reconvene to deliberate towards the new information given. After that, the outcome will be made and known to the entity. However, if they decided to not accept the rating process will be terminated. Next, in the step of rating public dissemination, RAM ratings will disseminate the rating once the rating has been accepted by the rated entities. The disseminate will be done through media and RAM website. The last step, it will consist of surveillance process. The RAM ratings will monitor all the rating assigned throughout the life of each issued debt. A formal surveillance exercise are scheduled once a year or more. From time to time, RAM ratings may request for additional information and having a meeting with the management. Next, we proceed with 3.3, which is Rating Watch. Rating Watch, known as an indicator for investor in monitoring towards possible changes in the rating assigned by RAM rating, either in long term or short term. This rating watch may show a positive, negative, or developing outlook. Thus, the rating may be rise when it shows a positive outlook, while the negative outlook shows the rating has possibility to being lowered. However, for the developing outlook, it shows when there are unusual situations which the rating is unclear whether it may raise, lower, or reaffirm. Next, for the rating outlook, a rating outlook is affixed by RAM ratings to long-term ratings. This outlook may be either a positive, negative, or stable. The positive rating outlook will show the rating may be increased, and the negative outlook will be used for the possibility of the rating that will be decreased or lowered. However, for the stable outlook, it will indicate a situation that the rating will be remain unchanged over the intermediate term. However, for the stable outlook, it will indicate a situation that the rating will be remain unchanged over the intermediate term. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Auni Athirah Binti Zamri. My metric number is 2021-119639. Now, I will continue with rating symbol. There are two types of sukuk that valued for rating under rank, namely debt basic sukuk and partnership basic sukuk. These two types of sukuk are then divided into three categories, that is national, Asian, and global. There is a different sukuk credit rating symbol for each of these categories, as well as category mark. However, the rating sign for long-term sukuk is alphabetic symbol, that is AAA to D, from the highest to lowest value, whereas the symbol for short-term sukuk is numbered from P1 to D, that is from highest to lowest value. This also applies to the Asian and global, as well as the partnership-based sukuk. The symbol are the same for all of them, but to differentiate between Asian and global, they add C for Asian and G for global. For example, for Asian, it will be CAAA. Next is the issue and challenges of sukuk in Malaysia. The first issue is the lack of transparency. There has been a lack of transparency in the sukuk market in terms of documentations, right, and responsibility of various parties. This is an issue from the viewpoint of Sharia compliance because sukuk is sold to buyers who are unaware of the contract's key aspect due to asymmetric knowledge risk of breaking the gharar prohibitions. The second issue is the ijarah sukuk structure. Some Sharia scholars have criticized the ijarah sukuk. They address some of the complaints leveled at the ijarah sukuk structure, including the issue of guarantees, the sale and leaseback process, and whether it resembles buy al-wafa or buy al-ina, that is, both of which have been rejected by the majority of Muslim scholars. And the last issue is regarding the hybrid sukuk. Despite the controversy surrounding asset-based sukuk, Sharia scholars are increasingly interested in hybrid sukuk. The 2008 Aufi resolution stated that sukuk must not represent any receivable or debts in order to be negotiable. For a hybrid sukuk to be negotiable, at least 51% of the pool of asset must be physical assets such as ijarah, according to that principle. Now, we proceed with the challenges. The first challenge is about the regulatory development. The regulatory framework for securitization in the Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) countries has yet to be established. The limitation on foreign ownership of certain assets in the GCC is the one of the most significant legal challenges. The second challenge is the market's low proportion of socially responsible investment, SRI or green sukuk, compared to green bonds. Green bonds are currently regarded as a substantial industry in the global market. One of the major obstacles to the issue of a green sukuk is the lack of an established market for such green instruments. The third challenge is the complexity of sukuk structure in the market. Another hindrance to the development of the sukuk market is its complicated structure. Such products in particular are difficult to value and unwind in the case of default. As a result, the complexity of sukuk structure might tend to deter many investors and issuers who have been burned by structured products in the past. In the conclusion, we can see that since its introduction in 1990, the Malaysian sukuk market has made significant progress and Malaysia has successfully created a niche market in this area. It has been rapidly growing as a result of its user appeal as well as the central bank's push to establish this new market as the world's primary funding market. RAM is a high-performing credit rating agency that complies with the standards and regulations set by the domestic regulators such as Securities Commission Malaysia, so users don't have to worry about the quality of sukuk rating. Lastly, even with the encouraging progress and expansions of the sukuk market, there are indeed numerous controversial issues that really need prompt solution in order to maintain the growth of the sukuk market. And to preserve the future viability of sukuk, all parties including regulators and Sharia scholars must work together to resolve the various sukuk issues. So that's all from our groups. Thank you.